The billionaire's dog howled at night and brought back his dead wife's ring. If this story finds you tonight, it is because you believe that love never truly dies, it only changes its form. Stay until the end, because what this man discovers will remind you that even grief can become a second chance to love. Now, let us return to our main character. It was the kind of night that made silence louder than sound. The wind scraped across the glass walls of the Lovelace estate, bending the trees that lined the long driveway. Somewhere near the gates, a single dog began to howl, a deep, trembling note that carried through the rain like a cry from another time. Inside, Hadrian Lovelace stood alone in his study, one hand resting on a tumbler of whiskey, the other on the edge of a photograph framed in dust. The photo showed him younger, smiling, a woman with long hair down to her waist, tucked under his arm. Her name was Nayara Mendoza. 10 years ago, she had died in a car accident that no one could explain. The ring she had worn that day, his ring was lost with her. Hadrian had spent years searching for it, not because of its price, but because of what it carried. The last proof that something pure had once belonged to him. Tonight, that memory pressed heavier than usual. On the table beside the photograph lay an unopened velvet box. Inside was another ring, sleek, silver, modern, the one he planned to give to someone else. Tomorrow, the world would know that the tech billionaire who built devices to measure compatibility had found love again. Investors would smile. The press would call it redemption. But Hadrian knew better. He was not in love. He was tired. The dog howled again, longer this time. Orion, his golden retriever, now gray around the muzzle, scratched at the door to the balcony, as if warning him of something unseen. Hadrian sighed, placed his glass down, and opened the door. Cold rain stung his skin. The dog stepped out into the storm and raised its head toward the night sky, howling so hard that its chest shook. "Enough," Hadrian whispered, his voice breaking slightly. "She is gone." But Orion only stared up at him, eyes reflecting the light like liquid gold. The housekeeper had told him that the dog always acted this way before every engagement, every attempt to move on. The first time he had thought it was coincidence, the second time superstition. Now, standing in the doorway with rain soaking his shirt and the sound of that desperate howl echoing across the property, Hadrian was no longer sure what to believe. He looked back at the photograph inside the study, the woman's smile caught mid-laughter, her hair blown by the wind, her hand flashing the very ring that had never been found. The same ring that still haunted his dreams. He turned away and knelt to meet Orion's eyes. "It has been 10 years, he murmured. "You have to let her go." The dog rested its head against his knee, silent now, but trembling. Hadrian's hand lingered on its collar, a worn strip of leather engraved with 2 initials, H and N. His thumb traced the letters like a ritual. For a moment he thought he felt something small and hard beneath the surface of the leather, but he dismissed it. Probably the buckle, probably nothing. Lightning flashed, and the photograph caught the glare. For a heartbeat, the faces inside seemed alive again, their laughter, the promises, the unfinished life between them. Then the light vanished, and everything went still. Hadrian closed the door, leaving the storm and the howl behind him. The sound faded into memory. But before dawn, it would return one last time, and with it, a truth buried for 10 long years. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us continue the story. Morning arrived like a guest who had stayed too long. The rain had stopped, but the clouds still pressed low over the Lovelace estate. Inside his office, Hadrian Lovelace sat behind a wall of glass overlooking acres of trimmed lawn that looked more like an empty stage than a home. On the surface, everything appeared perfect: the manicured gardens, the fleet of silent staff, the gleam of new technology humming from every corner. Yet the man who owned it all felt as hollow as the echo of his own footsteps. The world saw him as a visionary, the founder of LoveTech, a company that built devices designed to measure emotion heart rate rings, mood sensors, digital indicators of love. The irony was not lost on him. The man who had once sold passion through algorithms now lived in a house where not a single heartbeat felt real. On the massive screen before him, a marketing team presented the concept for his latest product, the love band, a smart ring that could predict emotional compatibility by tracking biological signals. As the young presenter spoke in polished enthusiasm, Hadrian's expression remained unreadable. When the meeting ended, his assistant lingered by the door. "Sir," she said cautiously, "the engagement announcement is scheduled for 6 this evening. Shall I confirm with the press?" Hadrian nodded mechanically. "Confirm it." The words tasted metallic in his mouth. He closed his laptop, and for a moment his own reflection stared back at him, tired eyes, unshaven jaw, a man who looked successful but felt extinct. He stood and crossed the room to the shelf, where a single object broke the symmetry, a framed blueprint, yellowed at the edges. In faint pencil lines, the title read, "House for Tomorrow, Nyara's Last Design." It was supposed to be a community center, filled with open light and greenery, a place where people could heal through creativity and connection. She had called it her dream project. He had promised to fund it. The accident had turned that promise into guilt. A low sound drew his attention. Orion was lying near the door, watching him with weary eyes. The old dog had followed him to work since the early days of the company, sleeping beside the servers while Hadrian coded through the night. It was the only creature left that had known him before the headlines, before the loneliness. He walked over and knelt, running his fingers through the dog's fur. "You should have retired a long time ago," he murmured. "We both should have." The housekeeper entered quietly, carrying a towel to dry Orion's paws. "He barely slept," she said. The storm frightened him again. Hadrian gave a small nod. "He is getting older." "Perhaps he senses something," the woman said gently. "Dogs feel what we ignore. Every time you try to remarry, he howls like his heart breaks all over again." He forced a faint smile. "You are giving him too much credit. He just misses her scent." "Maybe," the housekeeper replied. "But sometimes missing is the purest form of loyalty." When she left, the silence returned. Hadrian leaned against the wall, his thoughts circling like trapped birds. The engagement tonight was not about love. It was about reputation, the image of stability investors demanded. He had convinced himself that sentiment had no place in the empire he had built. But the more he tried to bury the past, the louder it seemed to echo in photographs, in dreams, in the quiet eyes of a dying dog. He turned toward the balcony. Outside, the sky was beginning to clear, streaked with hesitant gold. Orion followed him to the glass door, tail barely moving. As Hadrian opened it, the wind carried a faint scent of lavender, the same scent Nyara used to wear. He froze, half expecting to see her silhouette on the terrace, sunlight tangled in her long hair. Of course, there was no one. Only the whisper of wind through the vines she had planted years ago. He whispered, almost to himself, "I am trying, Nyara." Behind him, the digital clock on his desk blinked 6 times, reminding him that another announcement, another performance was waiting. He turned away from the view and straightened his jacket, his reflection once again polished and empty. But just before he left the room, Orion let out a single low howl, soft but mournful, as if to warn him that this day would not end as planned. Before we continue, if you are enjoying this story so far, please remember to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you will never miss our next romantic drama. It is completely free, and your support truly helps us create more stories like this one. Thank you very much. And now let us continue the story. That evening, the lights of the Lovelace estate burned brighter than usual. Staff moved quietly through the halls, arranging flowers and preparing for the private engagement dinner that would take place later that night. Reporters waited at the gates, their cameras ready to capture the moment when Hadrian Lovelace, the reclusive billionaire, would officially move on from his decade of mourning. Inside the library, however, Hadrian sat alone with Orion lying beside his chair. The air smelled faintly of rain and polished wood. The dog's breathing was shallow, but its eyes remained open, following every movement of its master as if afraid to look away. Hadrian had changed into a black suit, but his tie hung loose. He had spent half an hour staring at the engagement ring, resting in its boxer ring, that meant nothing compared to the one that had been lost. His fingers brushed against the old collar at his feet. The engraved initials H and N had begun to fade, worn down by years of loyalty. The housekeeper entered quietly with a tablet. "Sir, Miss Marielle has arrived. She is waiting in the West Hall." "Thank you," Hadrian replied, his tone polite but distant. "Tell her I will join her shortly." When she left, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "What am I doing, Orion?" he whispered. 10 years, and I am still building walls instead of homes. The dog's tail moved once, a small, tired gesture. Outside, thunder rolled far in the distance. He reached for the collar again, and noticed something odd, a faint ridge under the leather, like a seam stitched over an uneven surface. His brow furrowed. The collar had been replaced once, years ago, after Orion's first surgery. Perhaps the ridge came from the repair. Yet when he pressed it gently, he felt a small metallic shape beneath. He tried to push the thought aside, but it lingered. Something about the collar felt heavier than it should. The sound of heels echoed through the hallway. Marielle appeared at the door, flawless in a silver gown that reflected the light like water. "Everyone is waiting, Hadrian," she said softly. "The reporters, the board members this night matters." He stood, slipping the collar into his pocket. "Yes," he answered, "it matters." As they walked down the corridor, Marielle spoke of press releases and photo angles. Her voice faded into background noise. All Hadrian could hear was the rhythm of Orion's nails tapping against the floor as the dog limped behind them, refusing to be left behind. At the entrance to the dining hall, the sound of applause greeted them. Glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and the scene unfolded exactly as planned. Hadrian smiled for the photographs, shook hands, and delivered the expected toast. His words were polite, precise, rehearsed empty. Halfway through the dinner, Orion began to whine. The dog was lying by the grand piano, trembling as if something inside its chest ached. The guests murmured, concerned, but Hadrian lifted a hand. "It is all right," he said quickly. "He is old. The sound bothers him." But Orion did not stop. The whining deepened into a low growl, then into a long, mournful howl that silenced the entire room. The sound cut through the chatter, echoing off the marble floors until even the chandeliers seemed to vibrate. Hadrian's hand tightened around his glass. His vision blurred with sudden heat, embarrassment, sorrow, maybe fear. He excused himself and crossed the room, kneeling beside the dog. "Hush," he whispered. "Please, Orion, not tonight." The dog pressed its head into his palm and fell silent, but the tremor in its body would not stop. Hadrian could feel the heart beating too fast, the chest rising and falling in short, painful breaths. Something was wrong. He turned to the guests, his voice steady but urgent. "I am sorry. The dinner is over." Within minutes, he had carried Orion to his car, ignoring the cameras flashing behind him. The rain had begun again, soft but persistent, following him all the way to the veterinary clinic where he had taken the dog since the early days. When he arrived, the lights were dim. The night staff rushed to prepare a room. Hadrian stayed beside the table as they examined Orion, his hands trembling slightly. The veterinarian adjusted the oxygen tube, then looked up at him with quiet honesty. "Mr. Lovelace," she said, "he is very old. We will do everything we can, but you should prepare yourself. Sometimes love means knowing when to let go." Hadrian swallowed hard, unable to speak. He nodded, his eyes fixed on the old collar still clutched in his hand, unaware that the secret it carried was only hours away from being revealed. Before we continue, please take a second to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you will never miss any of our future romantic dramas. It is free, and your support helps us create more stories that touch the heart. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments below. Thank you very much, and now let us continue the story. The veterinary clinic was silent except for the steady hum of medical machines. Hadrian stood by the stainless steel table, his hand resting gently on Orion's paw. The dog's eyes were half open, calm but distant, as if already preparing to leave. Every breath came slower, and the room felt smaller with each passing second. Dr. Emilia Cortez entered quietly, tying her dark hair back. Her coat was slightly wrinkled, her eyes heavy with both focus and empathy. She was known for her calmness, the kind of woman who could hold both logic and kindness in the same sentence. Her hair fell just to her shoulders, framing a face that carried years of compassion. "Mr. Lovelace," she said softly, "I am Dr. Cortez. I have treated Orion before, many years ago. I will stay with him tonight." Hadrian nodded without lifting his eyes. "He has been with me since the beginning," he murmured. "Before the company, before the success, before the losses. I do not remember life without him." Emilia checked the monitors, her hands gentle as she adjusted the oxygen mask. "He is tired," she said, "but he is peaceful. Dogs like Orion never really leave, Mr. Lovelace. They just stay in another way." He looked up then, meeting her eyes for the first time. "You sound like my wife," he said quietly. "She used to say that love was energy. It does not disappear. It only changes form. Emilia offered a small, understanding smile. She must have been a remarkable woman. She was, Hadrian said. His gaze dropped to the dog again. Her name was Nyara. She designed buildings that were not just made of stone, they were made of hope. The vet remained silent, sensing that what he needed was not advice, but permission to grieve. The fluorescent light flickered once, then steadied. The clock on the wall marked the slow passage of time. After a while, Emilia spoke gently. I can give him a sedative to ease his breathing. It will not hurt. You can stay here as long as you want. Hadrian's voice broke slightly. Do it. She prepared the injection, her movements deliberate and respectful. When she finished, Orion gave one final exhale, long and soft, and his body relaxed completely. The monitor emitted a single, prolonged tone. For a moment, the world stopped. Hadrian's hand remained on the dog's fur long after the sound faded. His throat tightened, but no tears came. He had forgotten how to cry. Emilia placed a small towel over Orion's body, leaving only the collar visible. Would you like to keep this? She asked. He nodded and reached for it. The leather was warm from the dog's body. As his fingers traced the engraved letters, he felt that same uneven ridge again beneath the surface. He turned it over, frowning. There is something inside this, he said, more to himself than to her. May I see? Emilia asked. He handed it to her. She examined the seam closely, then reached for a small pair of scissors. With careful precision, she cut through a thin line of stitching. The leather separated, revealing a small hollow pocket hidden beneath the buckle. Something metallic fell onto the table with a soft clink. Emilia froze. Mr. Lovelace, she whispered, you might want to look at this. Hadrian leaned closer. In her palm lay a gold wedding, ring-dented, faded, but unmistakable. Inside the band, engraved in tiny script, were the words HN Eternum. He stared at it, speechless. His heart pounded as if the world had shifted under him. For a long time he could not breathe. This is impossible, he whispered. It was lost in the accident. They searched the entire site. Emilia looked at the collar, at the ring, then back at him. Maybe it was never lost. Maybe Orion found it, somehow kept it safe. 1. The rational part of Hadrian's mind wanted to dismiss the idea as coincidence, but something deeper, something human refused to. He turned the ring in his hand, watching the reflection of the fluorescent light glide across its surface. It was worn, scratched, but whole. He sank into the nearest chair, his shoulders trembling. He was carrying her memory all this time, he said, voice breaking. Emilia rested a hand on the table. Sometimes loyalty has a language we do not understand. You why? Hadrian nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the ring that had outlasted time, grief, and reason itself. For the first time in 10 years, a tear slid down his face. It landed on the metal, catching the light like a small piece of sunrise. He looked at Emilia, his voice quiet but sure. I think I am ready to stop running. Outside, dawn began to rise, a faint wash of pale gold spreading across the horizon as if the world itself was exhaling with him. Before we continue, if you have been following this story so far, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you will never miss our next cinematic stories about love, loss, and second chances. Your support truly helps us grow and bring you more heartfelt tales every week. Thank you very much. And now let us continue the story. The morning after Orion's passing, the Lovelace estate was unusually still. The staff moved quietly, aware of the heavy silence that filled the house. Hadrian sat by the large window of his study, the ring placed in front of him on a piece of folded velvet. The sky outside was gray, neither night nor day, just a muted in-between, much like the space inside his heart. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the moment the ring fell from the collar, the gleam of gold against steel, the quiet certainty that something larger than logic had guided it home. For the first time in a decade, he felt something close to peace, and something far more frightening, a beginning. His phone buzzed. It was Marielle. Her message was short, polite, and cold. I hope you find what you are looking for, Hadrian. The engagement is over. He stared at the words for a long time before deleting them. It felt like closing a door that had never truly been open. Later that afternoon, he drove back to the veterinary clinic to thank Dr. Emilia Cortez. The small building stood between a bakery and a bookshop, smelling faintly of antiseptic and warm bread from next door. When he entered, Emilia was speaking softly to an elderly woman holding a kitten. She looked tired but kind, her shoulder-length hair pulled back loosely, strands escaping near her face. When she saw him, her expression softened. "Mr. Lovelace," she said, "I was not sure you would come back. I wanted to thank you," he replied, "for staying with him, and for showing me what was hidden." She gestured toward the hallway. "Would you like to see something?" He followed her into a small office lined with files and medical equipment. On the wall hung photographs of pets and their owners, each one a small story of care and recovery. Emilia pointed to one frame in particular. It showed Nyara years ago, smiling as she stood beside a much younger Orion wrapped in a blanket. "She volunteered here once," Emilia said. "After the floods that year, she helped us rebuild the outdoor kennels. She used to talk about creating a place where people and animals could heal together. She called it the House for Tomorrow." "Okay." Hadrian stepped closer, his throat tightening. "She drew that design for me," he said quietly. "I was supposed to fund it. I never did." Emilia looked at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Then maybe this is your chance to finish what she started." He turned the idea over in his mind. A project that was not about profit or publicity, but about purpose. For the first time in years, his heart felt movement, a slow thaw. "How would I even begin?" he asked. Emilia smiled faintly. "You already have the blueprint. I can help with the therapy program. We can start small, a space for rescue animals and people dealing with grief. You have the means to build it, Mr. Lovelace. Maybe you just need a reason." He looked down at the ring in his palm, then back at her. "I think I just found one." The following weeks passed quietly but with purpose. The mansion's construction wing was reopened, the old sketches of Nyara's design pinned to the walls. Hadrian worked alongside architects, modifying the plans to include both human and animal therapy spaces. Emilia became a constant presence, practical, patient, and unafraid to challenge him when he slipped back into cold logic. At night, he often found himself walking in the garden where Orion used to rest, feeling the weight of the ring against his chest. It no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a compass. One evening, as the workers packed up, Emilia found him standing near the foundation of what would soon become the main building. "Do you think she would approve?" she asked. Hadrian looked at the sunset spilling across the half-built walls. "I think she already does," he said. The wind moved through the lavender bushes nearby, the same kind Nyara once planted. For the first time in years, the sound did not feel like a ghost whispering. It felt like home returning. In that quiet moment, with the ring glinting softly against his shirt and a new foundation rising before him, Hadrian Lovelace realized that healing did not mean forgetting. It meant remembering with purpose. And this was only the beginning of his tomorrow. Before we continue, please take a second to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you will never miss our next stories of love, loss, and redemption. It is completely free and helps us bring more cinematic tales straight to you every week. Thank you very much. And now let us continue the story. Months passed, and what had started as a small project began to grow into something far greater than Hadrian Lovelace could have imagined. The old design that Nyara had once drawn, the House for Tomorrow, was coming to life piece by piece. Concrete foundations turned into walls, walls turned into light-filled rooms, and those rooms began to fill with sound, laughter, hammering, footsteps, the music of people working for something that mattered. The construction site no longer looked like an extension of Hadrian's empire. It looked like a living promise. The sign outside read Orion's Haven, in simple black letters. Beneath it, smaller text said, "For everyone who loved and lost." Every morning, Hadrian arrived before sunrise, wearing rolled-up sleeves and carrying coffee for the workers. He was no longer the distant billionaire whose name appeared only in headlines. He was simply a man rebuilding the one thing money could never buy: meaning. Dr. Emilia Cortez became his quiet partner in this transformation. She managed the therapy programs and supervised the rescue animals that would soon become part of the healing center. Her shoulder-length hair was usually tied back, her clothes practical, her voice calm and clear. Hadrian found himself looking forward to her presence. She spoke to him not as a man of wealth, but as a man of wounds. She treated him as someone still capable of good, and that belief began to rebuild him from the inside out. One afternoon, while reviewing the plans for the garden area, Emilia joined him under the half-finished pergola. "The lavender section will go here," she said, pointing to a spot near the main walkway. She loved lavender, did she not? Hadrian nodded, the corners of his mouth softening. It was her favorite. She said it smelled like forgiveness. Emilia smiled. Then forgiveness will be the first thing people smell when they walk through the gates. Her words stayed with him. Later that day, as the workers packed up, Hadrian stayed behind. The sun was setting, painting the sky in the same shade of gold that used to reflect from Nyera's hair in the old photographs. He walked slowly through the site, past the pillars, past the half-assembled benches, until he reached the center courtyard where the memorial plaque would soon be placed. He sat down on the edge of a foundation stone and opened his hand. The wedding ring rested there, faintly warm from his touch. For 10 years, it had been a symbol of loss. Now it felt like a key. He whispered, almost to himself. "We are building it, Nyara, your dream." A gentle voice answered behind him. "And maybe yours too." He turned to see Emilia standing there, holding 2 cups of tea. She offered one to him and sat beside him without asking permission. The evening light caught in her eyes, turning them a soft amber. They drank in silence for a while. Finally, Hadrian spoke. "Do you believe in signs, Doctor?" Emilia tilted her head thoughtfully. "I believe in connection. Sometimes the world gives us small reminders that we are not finished yet." He nodded slowly. "Then I think the world sent me you." She smiled faintly, setting her cup down. "Maybe it sent us both here for the same reason, to finish something that someone else started." Arquay. The air between them settled into quiet understanding. No rush, no confession. Only peace, the kind that does not demand, only exists. When darkness began to fall, Hadrian stood. "Tomorrow, the first group arrives," he said. "Veterans, widows, people learning to start again. Orion's haven will finally open its doors." Emilia's smile deepened. "He would have liked that," she said. "The dog with the heart too big for one lifetime." "Come on." Hadrian looked toward the nearly finished building, where the wind moved through the scaffolding like a quiet hymn. "He gave me a reason to start again," he said softly. As they walked back toward the car, the night air carried the faintest trace of lavender, though the plants had not yet been planted. It was only the breeze, yet somehow it felt like memory passing by, familiar, kind, and forgiving. Hadrian glanced at the ring once more before slipping it onto a chain around his neck. It no longer belonged to the past. It belonged to everything that would come next. And for the first time in 10 years, he did not feel haunted by the night. He felt guided by it. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you will never miss another story of love, redemption, and healing. It is completely free and helps our channel reach more hearts around the world. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments below. Thank you very much, and now let us continue the story. The first week of Orion's haven opened quietly, without the flash of cameras or the noise of publicity. Hadrian Lovelace had insisted on it that way. The healing center was not built for headlines. It was built for people who needed silence, for those carrying invisible weight. Patients arrived one by one, veterans with haunted eyes, parents who had lost children, widows learning to sleep alone again. Each of them was paired with an animal to care for, and each of them left a little lighter than when they arrived. Hadrian spent his mornings helping wherever he could. He swept floors, replaced broken tiles, and walked the rescue dogs alongside volunteers. It was not the work of a billionaire. It was the work of a man relearning how to live. Dr. Emilia Cortez moved easily through the new rhythm of the place. She taught therapy sessions, comforted nervous visitors, and spoke with warmth that turned strangers into family. Her hair was still shoulder length, always tied back with the same simple clip. There was nothing glamorous about her, just quiet strength. One afternoon, while checking the kennels, she found Hadrian repairing a gate. His shirt sleeves were rolled, his hands marked with dust and sweat. He looked up as she approached. "You should let the workers handle that," she said gently. He smiled faintly. "They already did. I'm just making sure it stays together." She handed him a bottle of water. "You are still trying to fix everything, even when it is already standing." He paused, then took the bottle. "It is a hard habit to break." They walked together through the courtyard. The lavender Hadrian planted was beginning to bloom, a soft purple haze that danced in the wind. Nearby, a young girl brushed a golden retriever that had recently been rescued. The dog's gentle face reminded him painfully of Orion, but instead of sadness, he felt gratitude. Emilia noticed his expression. "Does it hurt to see another one?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. "It reminds me that he was never really mine to lose. He was sent to guide me here." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sunlight poured through the unfinished glass roof, scattering across the tiles like pieces of gold. Emilia finally said, "You know, Your wife would be proud of this place. Of you. Hadrian's voice was low. Sometimes I feel her here. Not like a ghost, more like a direction. That is how love survives, she replied. It turns into guidance. As they stood there, the bell near the entrance chimed softly, signaling the end of another day. The volunteers began to leave, their laughter fading into the evening air. Hadrian looked around at the sanctuary, the animals, the people, the blooming lavender. Everything was imperfect, but alive. He turned to Emilia. "When this is finished, I want you to stay," he said. "Not as staff, but as a partner." She looked at him with quiet understanding. "A partner in healing?" "A partner in everything," he said simply. For the first time, she did not answer with words. She just smiled, the kind of smile that felt like sunrise after a long storm. And for Hadrian Lovelace, that was enough. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you will never miss another story of hope, healing, and second chances. It is completely free, and it helps our channel grow so we can share more cinematic tales with you every week. Thank you very much. And now, let us continue the story. Months turned into a quiet rhythm of progress at Orion's haven. What began as a dream drawn in pencil by a woman long gone had now become a living place of purpose. The therapy garden was blooming in full lavender. The animals that had once trembled in fear now played in the open fields. Laughter drifted from every corner of the property, soft but steady, like a song learned by heart. Hadrian Lovelace no longer woke to silence. Every morning, the sound of voices, footsteps, and animals replaced the mechanical hum that used to fill his mansion. He spent less time in his glass office and more among the people whose lives were quietly rebuilding beside his own. Dr. Emilia Cortez remained at his side through every step of the transformation. She handled the details of care programs, trained volunteers, and refused to let Hadrian fall back into his habit of hiding behind logic. The two of them shared long days filled with work, small victories, and conversations that no longer felt like business. One Saturday afternoon, a community event brought families to the haven. A young boy with a prosthetic leg ran with a rescued Labrador, his laughter echoing across the courtyard. An elderly woman sat by the fountain, sketching the animals in a notebook. Nearby, a veteran helped a nervous rescue cat learn to trust human touch again. Hadrian watched it all unfold from the terrace. For the first time in years, he did not feel like an observer of life, but part of it. Emilia joined him, her hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. "This is exactly what she wanted," Emilia said softly, watching the boy and the dog chase each other through the lavender. Hadrian nodded. "Yes, but I think it is what we both needed too." She looked at him. "You built this because of Nyara, but you have kept it alive because of yourself. That is the difference between memory and healing." Her words struck him with quiet clarity. He realized that the pain he had once used as a reason to stop living had become the very thing that pushed him forward. Later that evening, as the guests left and the golden light faded from the sky, Hadrian walked through the garden alone. The lavender swayed gently under the breeze, releasing its familiar scent. He stopped near a small stone bench where he had placed a brass plaque. "For Nyara and Orion. For everyone who loved and lost." Emilia approached, holding 2 cups of tea. She sat beside him, close but comfortable. "You know," she said, "healing is not a straight line. Some days we build, some days we break, but we keep showing up. That is what matters." Hadrian turned to her, his gaze soft. "I used to believe love ended with death. Now I think it begins with understanding." Emilia smiled. "Then maybe you finally understand her." He looked at the plaque one last time before facing her again. "And maybe I am beginning to understand myself." The evening air grew cooler, but neither of them moved. Above them, the first stars appeared, faint and distant, but steady. For the first time in 10 years, Hadrian felt whole, not because his grief had disappeared, but because it had found a home. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you will never miss another emotional story of love, healing, and redemption. It is completely free, and it helps us continue creating cinematic tales that speak to the heart. Thank you very much. And now let us continue the story. The morning of the grand opening arrived. A golden light poured across the grounds of Orion's haven, catching on every window, every petal of lavender, and every hand that had helped build the place. What had once been a sketch drawn by Nyara Mendoza was now real, a sanctuary filled with life, compassion, and quiet hope. Guests began to gather. Families who had found comfort here, Veterans who had rediscovered purpose, children who had learned to smile again all came to celebrate. The energy of the crowd was calm but deeply alive, like a collective breath after a long silence. Hadrian Lovelace stood near the main gate, dressed simply in a gray suit. He held the same wedding ring in his hand, the one Orion had carried for 10 long years. For a moment he rubbed his thumb over the engraving HN. Eternum and smiled softly. Beside him stood Dr. Emilia Cortez, her shoulder-length hair moving gently in the wind. She was dressed in white, calm and graceful, her presence grounding him in the moment. "Are you ready?" she asked. He nodded. "I think I have been ready for a long time." As the small crowd quieted, Hadrian stepped forward to speak. His voice carried easily through the open courtyard. 10 years ago, I believed love ended when life did. I was wrong. Love continues in every act of kindness, in every second chance we give ourselves, and in every hand that reaches out to help another heal. This place, Orion's Haven, was built in memory of those we have lost, but it exists for those still here, still living. He paused, his eyes glancing toward the memorial plaque near the fountain, engraved with the words, "For Nyera and Orion, for everyone who loved and lost. When I lost them," he continued, "I thought I would never feel whole again. But grief does not mean the end of love. It means love was real enough to leave a mark. And when we build something good out of pain, that is how love keeps living." Applause rose softly through the crowd, gentle, respectful, filled with emotion. Emilia stepped beside him, placing a hand over his. Together, they cut the ribbon and opened the gates. As people entered, the scent of lavender filled the air. Children ran across the courtyard, dogs barked with joy, and the gentle rhythm of laughter replaced the sound of sorrow that had once haunted the estate. Hadrian looked at Emilia, his expression peaceful. "She would have loved this," he said. Emilia smiled. "She does. In her own way, she is still here, just like he is." He nodded, his gaze lifting toward the sunlight streaming between the clouds. He took the ring and slid it onto his finger, not as a reminder of what he lost, but as a promise to live with purpose. His voice lowered to a whisper, barely louder than the wind. "To remember is to love twice." "Are they?" The crowd moved on toward the celebration, but Hadrian stayed for a moment longer. The sound of laughter mixed with the rustle of the lavender fields. He could almost hear the faint bark of a familiar dog and the soft laughter of a woman with long hair down to her waist. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and smiled. "Sometimes love leaves through the door," his voice said quietly, "only to return on 4 legs. Har." And with that, the story of Hadrian Lovelace, Nyara Mendoza, and Orion came full circle, not as an ending, but as a beginning shaped by